the topic.
Oh
of
God,
the day.
not him again.
Come on, this fucking
Come on,
asshole.
CJ.
Every time he says movement, I throw up a little bit in my mouth. He loves to use that word. What we have to do for the movement? What the fuck, you don't know what the fuck a movement is, motherfucker. What are you talking about, movement?
The movement is probably when he craps his pants when Crystal kind of eyes him evilly, like, you better say something nice about Marianne in this video.
Unfortunately, guys, we actually have 2 clips of his we're gonna play. So this is so because in sort of researching and preparing this, it was very hard to find articles and videos that was talking about the Justice Democrats collapse that wasn't also talking about the Bernie Sanders issue. So they're kind of all intertwined. So we may go in and out of, because we need to talk about the collapse of the Justice Democrats. And I want to do that first, because then the question after that segment will be, does the collapse of the Justice Democrat indicate anything about the Bernie Sanders movement being dead or not? Because they are intertwined to me at the hip. They're one and the same, in my opinion. And then we'll move on to the other video where he's talking about the next topic. I'm sorry, the next connected topic. So I'm sorry, is the Bernie Sanders movement dead? And that's with Freddie DeBauer. Now, we covered his article, and he has Freddie DeBauer on to debate him. And I know some of you have already covered it, so we're gonna kind of piece this together, because we, as the post-duopolists, we have a unique ability and a unique sort of duty to sort of analyze the collapse of the Justice Democrats, how it's connected to the enthusiasm being low, the donations drying up, all of these sort of things happening, and then answering the broader question is the Bernie movement dead? So that is the plan. We want to try to keep this maybe about an hour with both videos, maybe 30 minutes with this one, 30 minutes with the next one. We will have a lot to say, we already know, but let's make sure we're trying to keep it with the framing of, we're talking about the collapse where we've already left. We're the post-duopoly. We've already left this. We've already left for the reasons Freddie DeBauer has spoken about and written about. So let's get into this, Nick. And the reason I asked you, because my internet, when I move, the internet is worse over here. So it's going in and out. Sometimes I may be glitchy. So Nick will play the video. So start and stop wherever you want. We'll probably only get through maybe 6 or 7 minutes of it before 30 minutes is up, before we go to the next video. But all right, Nick, whenever you're ready, unless somebody else want to preface this video.
Big story dropped last week
about
Justice Democrats that I wanted to share with you and give you guys my take on it. So Huffington Post has this long article by Daniel Marins, who, by the way, does a phenomenal job with his reporting. I feel like this was very detailed. And the title here is, "A Progressive Powerhouse's Surprise Layoffs Fuel Concerns About the Left's Future. Justice Democrats played a critical role in electing the squad. Now it will have to do more with less." Okay. So they actually bring me up in this piece, and, some of my criticisms against Justice Democrats. And like I said, very long article, very detailed. Do yourself a favor and go read the entire thing. But I'll sum it up for you here, and then I'll give you guys my take on it. So basically,
you guys wonder why the state of the left is how it is right now? Why the state of movement is so pathetic? Mm-hmm. Because people like Kyle Kulinski has been influential voice for 10 plus years.
Not only that,
TYT has been a thing for how long? People haven't even heard of mutual aid until RBN hit the scene. You know how many people tell me that? What other YouTube channel was even talking about it before RBN? It wasn't a thing. You have morons like Kyle Kulinski giving the working class horrible advice, and you have the professional managerial class who uplift this moron like he's some sort of intellectual. Never read theory a day in his life.
Not only that, he has made himself comfortable. He has built himself up as this individual that supposedly was going to challenge the Democrats, be a voice for the voiceless, but he made himself comfortable. And by getting fat, no pun intended, he wants to ensure that his apple cart is not disrupted, because he wants to be part of a club. He needs to be part of a club because that's how insignificant Kyle feels. Because again, anyone that he's been associated with no longer wants to be around him. I mean, look at his betrayal to Jimmy Dore, and also even TYT no longer associates with him. That's how far Kyle has fallen, and he wants to remain relevant and comfortable, and wants to bring up hope for the Democrats, so he still has that cushiony job with the people in the elite media. That's the only reason why. So,
do you guys have any idea how much of a joke the United States left is compared to like the way that I would talk to Josana and many Brazilian socialists and communists? They're like, "What American left? What Bernie?" Like it's a joke to them who we are, and that's because people like Kyle's been in charge. But Russell, I know you want to chime in. Russell, you can chime in, and we get back to the video after you.
I mean, you know, man, I think he has a fetish for older women, and all of this is part of his submission. You know, this is, I think his show is just him acting out his submission kink. Crystal tells him what to do. Marianne kind of backs it up, and that's pretty much his show. That's the only way I can explain how he looks like, you know, they took him and just bleached him somewhere. Yeah. And fried out his hair, and you look at how he looked before he started dating Crystal. You know, it's like they turned him into a vampire or something. Like he doesn't even look like the same person. No. Like it's and his politics at this point. Like, I mean, he was always a bowl of warm oatmeal, but he was never this just fundamentally dumb. Like his takes don't even seem like his takes. Like he seems like he's trying to please somebody. Like what are you even talking about? I don't even. You forgot to mention my queen, Marianne. Like, look, man. Even if you do like her, why would you talk like that if you wanted to be taken seriously as a commentator, even if that's, you know, you support Marianne and all that? Like, why would you talk that way? That's what I'm saying. Like, looking at how he behaves, it's just not even in accord with who he was before. Like, even if, you know, he's become more corrupted, it's not. It's just dumb. Like, the things he's saying are so dumb. It almost seems like he's trying to please Crystal, frankly. I mean, I know that's getting
if I was being a growth scientist, if I was being a street psychologist, right, I could make a theory, because there's a very hilarious video we're going to show you guys, so you can know without a shred of a doubt that it was not us that changed. It was people like Kyle Kulinski. So there's this video with Kyle, and we're going to play this after the segment. Seriously, saying, if you think Joe Biden is worse than, if you think Donald Trump is worse than Joe Biden, you're an idiot. These are things that he used to say. So you can make the argument that Kyle's blonde hair is him in a psychological way rejecting his past self. So he not only do he had to change his political rhetoric, he got to change his entire appearance because he's rejecting who he used to be in the past. So look, man.
I'm gonna keep it real. I'm not afraid to be a psychologist. This guy is whipped, man. He's whipped. He is doing whatever he needs to do to please his woman. That is what I see. Like, why would you make yourself look like Eminem? He knows that everybody's making fun of him. Do you think if she didn't like that, he would make himself look like that? So that means it was probably all right. Oh, baby, can you dye your hair? I think it's the same thing with his politics. I mean, that's like, yeah, I'm kidding, but I'm really not. Like, I do think that's a big part of what's going on. Like, yeah, might he have drifted into this kind of politics? Sure, that was going on for a long time, but I don't know, man. I've been around the block, and this seems like some whipped behavior to me.
Or either that, Crystal's got some A+ sex game, and it just made submissive.
Let's get back to the video. Let's get back to the video. Let's get back to the video.
Yeah, we don't want to make it too perfect.
CJ's like, all right, we got a strike, and I don't know how this is going to play to the censors.
Yeah,
let's just
get to the video.
I'll give you a quick backstory just so you remember all the details here, but in the wake of the 2016 election, Hillary Clinton, of course, lost to Donald Trump. And I was just disgusted and furious that a guy like Donald Trump could get anywhere near the White House. And I viewed...
Not Hillary Clinton?
that as a colossal failing of the Democratic Party to not be able to beat the most beatable opponent in history, because
I was disgusted that Hillary Clinton was about to get the honor of the first woman president. I was like, man, she don't deserve that shit.
Oh, thank you.
This is
Thank
horrible
you.
ending. That was my reaction. Like
Thank
Cal was
you.
revealing his shit libbery.
I was
Now,
so
trust
happy
me.
when Hillary Clinton lost. I mean, so many people were saying like, "Kid, you got to vote for Hillary. You got to vote for Hillary." I was like, "No, I don't. I was there in Philly. I saw what her people did to the delegates. I saw what the male delegates who were working for Hillary Clinton, what they were doing to women Bernie Sanders supporters and delegates.
Yo,
All
if
the
you think
stories are the
Kyle's
same."
whipped, wait till you meet a male delegate for Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, geez.
Let's continue. Let's
They will
continue.
follow
give
all
Kyle
coming
that.
across.
Let's continue.
that disconnected from average people. And so, I got together with Cenk Uygur and Shoykat Chakrabarti and Corbin Trent and some others, and we decided we need to change the course of the Democratic Party and try to make it so we get representatives who stand for something, who will fight for the American people, and make it so that the Republicans are an afterthought and they lose all the time because we are representing the people so well. And for me, a big inspiration about it was FDR. When you go back and read the history of FDR's time in office, it's astonishing. It's something we've never seen in the modern era. It's somebody won the presidential election 4 times. This is before there were term limits. In fact, the Republicans looked at that and said, we need to do term limits because we'll never be able to beat these guys because they're too good.
Oh, my God.
So he won the presidential election 4 times. And he also, at one point, held 80% of the House and 80% of the Senate. So just crushing majorities. Why? Because he delivered with the New Deal. And people said, oh, you help me, I will vote for you. And so we decided we need to fight back against the corporate Democrats and make the Democratic Party uncorrupted. And so the original working name for Justice Democrats was actually...
But that didn't work out. So
Oh,
now
you're
we're supporting
so
Marianne
proud.
Williamson. Right.
Let's
I mean, that's
continue.
what's so absurd about this. He's like, yeah, no, now we admit that was a failure, which is why I'm now supporting Marianne Williamson for president in the Democratic primary. Right? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
And they still, it does not matter how many staff members come out with stories of abuse. None of them covered it. None of them will touch it.
That's amazing to me.
They're
That's
just-
amazing.
They can't.
They're
They
just
can't.
going to keep promoting her and pretending none of that is happening.
No, you gotta understand the liberals idolize the girl boss. Remember, they see Marianne as slaying it, fucking sticking it to the patriarchy by being mean to their workers.
And then after that, there was some disagreement around that one, and because it sounds like you're being more right wing than left wing. So there's arguments on both sides. I understand that, but the whole idea was, let's have a Democratic faction which fights like the Tea Party fights Republican leadership. We want Democrats to fight Democratic leadership to go in a more progressive.
Can you pause it
direction and
there?
represent the American people.
Yeah, 1 second.
And then
So he says, now listen, this is the creator of the organization that we're talking about has collapsed. And when we're talking about, we'll get to the article in a second, we're talking about the layoffs, massive layoffs. So he's saying they wanted a Democratic Tea Party. Now, why is he, because at this time the Tea Party was a little bit more popular, the name at least. Now, why would they want a Democratic Tea Party? What about the Tea Party do you want to emulate on the other side? Because now when you hear them talk about the Justice Democrat or this strategy of getting power through the Democratic Party, they seem to forget this part, because the whole essence, the whole stitch, the whole persona of the Tea Party was being adversarial till their own party. So that's what he wanted to do, because he felt like, listen, I'm inspired. FDR, he's adding a lot to this. David Sirota's been working with him for the story for this, so he's adding a lot to it. But the point being made that is initially what they wanted to start out to do, and that's what they sold all of us on, and that has been the expectation. And now they want to. Now all these years they've moved the goalposts to pretend like that's not the expectation. And you remember classically, before I pass it back to the panel or to Nick, if you want to start the video, Nina Turner saying they've all we got. What are we gonna do if we throw them away? Remember the video with the Humanist Report that famously kind of went viral in a bad way?
Yeah.
So I passed back to the
it was all about the dollars, though, at the end of the day, because look, you had the 2016 movement that I think surprised everyone. I mean, who could forget the day when Bernie Sanders showed up on TYT, for example, and the explosion of viewership and subscribers all of their videos got throughout that primary and even through that election. But the thing is, you have to keep it going. You have to remain relevant. And their whole idea was to pump up these other individuals as the next Bernie. They're trying to find their next face, their next front card. And it was all about the dollars. Justice Democrats, Brand New Congress, Our Revolution, DSA. It was all about money because they wanted to milk people for their hard-earned dollars. That's all it was, unfortunately.
Sorry, my bad, Cal. I just want to read this comment about Jay, part of the RBN family. Jay says the Tea Party will astroturf like a motherfucker. Kyle leaves that part out. They were controlled opposition from the very beginning, almost like Justice Democrats. So I guess Kyle was onto something. He had a model.
Yeah, he was. Well, there you go.
I would actually push back because even the Tea Party was able to get some things that they wanted, and they made Boehmer's life a living hell. I mean, God, he still has PTSD. Was dealing with the Tea Party, so at least they somewhat were able to make their speaker's life a miserable. Yes, they did.
They made people quit.
They made people quit.
Like they made some GOP leadership quit. Like Paul Ryan was like, fuck this shit, man. I'm tired of these assholes.
Well, they got rid of they primary. What was his name? Is Eric Cantor, right? Who was like a ranking.
That was their first big win.
Right.
Getting rid of Eric Cantor.
Yeah, we can get back to the video. Let you guys have anything else. But let's get back to it. We still got a lot covered.
So the second name, I believe we were toying with New Deal Democrats. Again, that's the ode to FDR.
Get the fuck
then
off
I think
that.
Eventually we went to Justice Party Democrats, and then we settled on Justice Democrats. So anyway,
Thank God they didn't do that one.
You know, I was on the board, as was Jank. We never took a penny for doing any of this because we just wanted to do the right thing for the country. This wasn't about me personally. And we were involved in every single board meeting. You know, I wrote the platform for it. You had Shoykot and Corbin brought in all these candidates, and we punched way above our weight for the amount of money we were able to raise. But at the time, it was all small dollar donations. It was you guys donating, and we punched way above our weight. We got AOC to get rid of Joe Crowley. You know, there's a number of Justice Democrats who are there now. Ilhan Omar,
get to the point.
The list goes on and on. You guys know the deal. So here we are today, and what they say in this article is they're laying off 9 of their 20 staffers. Donations have dried up for Justice Democrats. Now, Marins also goes on to point out, well, it also dried up for Planned Parenthood, the Sierra Club. Like, this is sort of across the board.
Can you pause it here? It dried up for Planned Parenthood and Sierra Club. These are all Democrat adjacent organizations, along with DSA, along with but just think about that. Why are donations drying up for Democratic aligned organizations? Is it because they have not delivered on anything?
For the libs. What happened to Roe? What happened to Roe? Even the things that their people care about, they didn't deliver on.
Nope.
We're gonna hit the streets, Russell. We're gonna hit the streets when they overthrow Roe.
Oh man,
they're gonna hold their feet to the fire. Remember?
Jesus Christ.
They're gonna hold their feet to the fire. Oh yeah, they're bringing the ruckus.
Well, what's also interesting too is you could tell by his body language that he's trying to do everything he can to not make Justice Democrats look bad, but still it's like, I can't believe this is happening because
what does that deflection have to do anything to your point?
He was kicked out. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I don't know why he's praising this organization when they kicked out Jank and Kyle for stupid reasons, by the way.
Well, did they kick out Kyle or he resigned in solidarity?
Yeah,
Solidarity's resigned. Yeah,
he resigned in solidarity. Why, in God's name, are you praising people that gave you the middle finger and didn't realize that Jank and Kyle at the time had the largest platforms for online independent media? If anything, I would be like, well, you know what? I tried helping these people out. We built it up. Kyle admits he wrote the platform. So there you go. So already that's the reason why it probably failed anyway.
There's a pattern of behavior there. There's a pattern of behavior there.
Yeah.
Because the same way that Kyle was kicked out of the Justice Democrats, and you're like, I had no issue with that. I'm gonna still promote you guys. The same way that Bernie Sanders kicked him off his show. He's like, all right, thank you, sir. Thank you for coming on my show, sir. I will leave, sir. No, I have no problem with that, sir. Like, no self-esteem whatsoever. But anyway, let's continue.
Nation is drying up. The Sunrise Movement, of course, also laid off 35 of their 100 staffers. They point out in the piece 62% of Justice Dems donations are small dollar donations. And the head of Justice Democrats, Alexandra Rojas, she takes very little pay compared to other people who are in a similar position and running a political group like this. She gets paid $81,000 a year.
Who cares?
And,
she doesn't deserve a penny.
They just couldn't.
Yeah, that's not bad for being a total fucking loser.
And pay the bills. They were forced to lay off 9 of their 20 members. He also goes on to say there's now dark money groups that are affiliated with the establishment Democrats who are spending big to beat JD candidates. We saw this with AIPAC and AIPAC-related groups and other groups who are like anything to defeat people who are even mildly more progressive than the establishment Democrats. And this cycle...
That's not the reason why, Kyle. Are you playing like AIPAC? No. People woke up and saw these people for who they are. Are you pretending that this is sort of hit job, but the Justice Democrats are taken down by the establishment? No. It's because we see through them because they do not fight. They are tools of the establishment. Will you guys really have complaints if AOC tried to stop the Ukraine war and she couldn't? Imagine if AOC tried to start a movement for Medicare for all. I mean, she was in the streets trying to be in marches and she was not successful. Do you think we would be attacking her? No, we'd be allied with her and we'd be pushing through and trying to make it work. We attack them not because they failed, because they don't try. If they forced to vote on Nancy Pelosi and that shit did not work, you think we'd be mad at them?
No, I would
not understand.
Here's another thing too. It's like, holy cow, you guys actually made it happen. Matter of fact, we saw force the vote happen with the Republicans and the Freedom Caucus, and I'm just thinking, Jesus Christ, AOC, you and those other 14 other Democratic lawmakers could have done the same thing if you actually worked together, but they're not. They're not going to do it. The Justice Democrats got people that would just look pretty and convince people to empty up their wallets so that they can continue to move along. So Kyle's just right here looking sad and disheartened because now his baby and his little moneymaker is no longer relevant. Again, it all comes down to dollars. Kyle only cares about the dollars. And Kyle, why the hell you got your play buttons right behind you? Do you think that makes you look special? I just noticed that right there. He's got a silver and gold play buttons. Yeah. And take that shit down.
Let me insert this question. Let me insert this question as we finish up. Maybe play 2 more minutes of the video. But this is the question here. Actually, I didn't mean to roll it across, but I can read it. It says, is it fair to say the refusal to implement forced vote was the beginning of the end for the Justice Democrats? Is that fair to say? Like, because I would like to think that the failure of Nina Turner from being elected twice, being that she is kind of Democratic, Democrat adjacent, or at least just a Democrat adjacent, her inability to get elected twice, that wasn't the beginning of the end. That was sort of at the tail end. It was the reason. Yeah. I think forced to vote sort of showed their ass. It kind of dissuaded people. But what does everybody think about that before we finish out that?
What was your question? What was your question again?
Is it fair? Scrolling at the bottom, is it fair to say that the refusal to implement forced to vote was the beginning of the end for the Justice Democrats?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That was it.
But that was up to that point. Look, she was driving all the right people crazy. Pelosi did that disgusting article with Maureen Dowd where she spent like 3 paragraphs on her shoes, and she dismissed the squad. They're green, whatever. Right around that time, we were all in on this. I mean, most of us, I'm assuming you guys too, like, yeah, we got our people in there. They're driving Pelosi crazy. We would have stayed with them to the end. And not only that, you know what? Yeah, she was getting bad press from Fox News, but AOC was pretty popular then in the country in general. Because if there's anything Donald Trump proved, if you drive the establishment crazy, there are a lot of people who will like you no matter what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
You could be like, yeah, John McCain, I prefer people who get captured. You don't like it? Who don't get captured? You don't like it? Fuck you. And you got people who are just going to be like, just because he stood up to them, I like it, even if what he said was repulsive. So she was actually winning over a lot of people at that time. They got crushed. Right when the Medicare for All thing came up and they start talking about we're playing the long game. And I think a lot of us, it's very Lucy on the football, man. I mean, a lot of us were still waiting for that football. Like, oh, yeah, okay, well, let's see what committee they get on. They didn't get on no committees. They didn't get anything for that. They got nothing for that. And the only thing I want to add, just to be fair, what the Freedom Caucus people don't have to face is real pressure from the media and corporate America, because in the end, they don't want to tax anybody. They don't want to do things that are any real threat to real power. So they don't get the kind of pressure that the people we sent in there got. That's no justification for them caving to it, but it is an explanation for what, if you're being honest, you have to say it is harder to stand up for Medicare for All than it is to bitch about the budget and threaten to hold up budget negotiations when, in the end, you're not really threatening the people who run shit with any of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, kid.
Yeah, well, no, I was just going to say, we are going to do the AOC sunscreen thing, right? Because that's
we'll touch on that again. Yeah, we'll touch on that again. Yes,
because that's actually related to force the vote in a way. It's sort of a bookend, because now she's actually telling people, call the switchboard and demands imported sunscreen, right? Where 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago now, when she was asked to apply that same pressure in the force the vote situation, she said no, right? And so I think, those are two kind of bookends in a way.
You know what's interesting about force the vote, looking back at it, when Jimmy Dore first proposed it, I didn't know what to really make of it at first. And then as soon as I did, the thing that liberals hate the most, and that is read and do my own research, I realized like this is a good tactic, and it's from DSA. It's an organization that endorsed AOC in the first place. How is it that AOC wasn't even informed about this, not even willing to take it? And as soon as she was starting to be hostile towards it, and as soon as Cenk and Sam Cedar began carrying water for the progressives in Congress, and they weren't doing that, it's like, okay, well, now there's no incentive to help the Democrats. Cenk, you're telling us to keep our powder dry. AOC is saying that this is violence. Well, then why do we need to stick our necks out for you when you won't do a damn thing? If you're not going to fight for us, there's no incentive for any one of us here that's on this panel right now, or anybody watching this show right now, to stick their neck out for any quote unquote progressive in the Democratic Party, because they show that they're not going to fight. In fact, dare I say it, AOC just wants to show up to work, clock in, clock out.
I actually want to add something to that, because I will push back slightly. Force the vote was one thing that woke a lot of people up. I will add the Ukraine war. That's a big one that changed that. And the reason why I say that, because we don't bend to civility politics, we always call these people on the left out. You know what I mean? Like we don't shy away from quote unquote left infighting. And you guys know there are a lot of professional managerial class people who tend not to criticize Bernie Sanders and AOC. But you notice the Ukraine war was the thing that that literally was the camel that broke the straw that broke the camel's back, because there were people like Norman Finkelstein, people who like criticizing Bernie and AOC is above me. Like, you guys know these people, and people I respect, like Norman Finkelstein is like me, one of those people. When Bernie and AOC voted to support the Ukraine war, people like him and Aaron Mate. I remember Aaron Mate used to be on the Jimmy Dore show, and I got a lot of respect for Aaron. But he used to say stuff like, "Oh, I'm not ready to say fraud squad yet. I'm not ready to say fuck Bernie Sanders yet." Then the second they voted for Ukraine war, Aaron was like, "Fraud squad, fuck Bernie Sanders." There was a lot of these people that were gentle on Bernie and AOC that immediately turned.
Well, that's a great point, and that speaks to a lot of why Kyle sounds like, some of us used to sound 5 years ago, because he, like many in the Bernie movement, like many out of DSA, have no take on that. They have no take on the Ukraine war. It just you would think it's not happening if you watch their show. They never cover it. They never opine on it. They never tweet about it. Nothing. You would think it's not happening.
Yeah. Anyway, let's CJ,
in their atmosphere. Yeah. Not yet. No. We're gonna go to the second video, but let me bring up the article so we can read a couple of parts of it, because it does bear a little bit of a discussion by the group. And the title, of course, is "Layoffs at Justice Democrats Shake Progressives," and of course, by the Hill. So let's read just a little bit of it. Let me scroll down here. So, large-scale layoffs at top left-wing organizations are underscoring progressive challenges in the Biden era, with major figures becoming despondent about what the future of their movement could look like. Let me pause here already, because let's read this again. It says large-scale layoffs at a top left-wing organization are underscoring, this is the part, underscoring progressive challenges. Anytime you have corporate organizations, when they're using stuff like challenges, like when they say Biden has a few challenges, that means he has a lot of problems. That's their word to squash what it really means. Progressives has had big problems in the Biden era. That's what that should say. With major figures becoming despondent about what the future of their movement could look like. Justice Democrats, the upstart turned powerhouse group that helped insurgents win seats in Congress, recently made significant operational changes and cuts to its workforce, prompting a debate amongst leftists about the tactical hurdles to carrying out their vision. And anytime you guys, I can't see you, so let me know if you want to stop and comment. The reshuffle came amid signs the movement is not as energized as it was even 7 years ago, as Democrats across the spectrum seek to coalesce around President Biden ahead of possible rematch against former President Trump. And here's a quote, and this is from Cenk. They quote Cenk in this article. Quote, "The people who ran as Justice Democrats all promised to fight the establishment on our behalf. In fact, it was their number one promise." And this is what we were alluding to earlier. "And they chose not to do that," end quote, said Cenk Uygur, host of the Young Turks, who has been outspoken about the left's flank shortcomings. Quote, "That's devastating," end quote, Uygur said, end quote again, "It took all the wind out of our movement," end quote. After Trump took control of the White House in 2016, Democratic groups tailored their efforts to rectify the assault against marginalized Americans under his administration. The desire for a party-wide response that outraged inspired a new wave of activism with plenty of money coming in. And this last paragraph, before I pass it to the group, and we can close this segment and move on to sort of the second part, which is the Bernie movement dead? Justice Democrats had a different focus. Unlike the groups that were exclusively focused on defeating Republicans and the right-wing agenda, niche left shops turned their sights inward. Organizing were both inspired by Senator Bernie Sanders' bid and infuriated he lost the nomination to Hillary Clinton. They sought to change the composition of the Democratic Party. So let's ask ourselves, with these layoffs, did the Justice Democrats, in their efforts and their strategy to change the makeup of the Democratic Party, can we say they were effective or successful?
Well, it was obviously a massive failure, and the thing about that article, I mean, there's so much to say about that article, but I'll be as brief as I possibly can. You cannot affect the kind of change that the Justice Democrats were hoping to affect as a marginalized subset of a giant superstructure that is bound to swallow whatever movement you actually build up inside it. I mean, that is just structurally flawed from the outset. That's why we are post-duopoly. As for this outrage about the marginalized groups being victimized by Trump, the marginalized groups victimized by Trump are being more marginalized and more victimized now under Biden than they were under Donald Trump. So that was fake activism. It was fake outrage. It was all bullshit, which is part of why some of the so-called Justice Democrat factions didn't buy into it and eventually left the group once the group ultimately was swallowed, inevitably, as it was bound to be, by the larger superstructure called the Democratic Party. So there was a giant design flaw from the outset. It never really had any chance of succeeding. And I just have to say, I'm sorry if this is somewhat unrelated, but the fact that Cenk Uygur is now admitting to mainstream press outlets, well, that took all the wind out of this movement, just as his network is pivoting in a more right-wing direction, right, with the Anna Kasparian, right, now moderating on the social issues. And I'm not even, look, we have actually defended Anna on the substance of those pivots, right, so I'm not even saying she's wrong. But you see what opportunists they are. Right as they notice that all of the gas is out of the Justice Democrats train, that's when he lets Anna go off and explore some more right-of-center territory, right? They're just such snakes, you know what I mean? Like, it's not a coincidence that he's doing this network pivot right as he's admitting that Justice Democrats was a failure.
He's also signaling to donors, too, that he needs money. He's probably signaling to people that, hey, if you help us out here, Anna could do more hot takes, and we'll obey. Because after a while, because look, when Katzenberg gave that money to Cenk, the thing is about making an investment, you have to pay it back. Like, that wasn't just a free lunch for Cenk and them to use for TYT.
Yeah, didn't he go on Patrick Bet David and try to reach out, try to form some kind of alliance?
Yes, and he also went on that show to also say publicly, and again, I can't believe he forgot this, but Cenk said on that show that there was no election fraud that took place during the 2016 primary, and TYT forgot. Thank God for Roger Meadows and a few other people in my audience who told me, well, wait, TYT did a documentary video about the California primary of 2016. They did a documentary video. TYT, it's on their network, Rebel Headquarters Network. I think it has like maybe 600 or 800,000 views on it right now. But they
did some great work. Look, one of the best videos in indie progressive media history. If there is a Hall of Fame for people in this space, definitely one of the best videos ever done in this entire space was Cenk Uygur's rant about the Nevada convention, where Barbara Boxer flipped off the crowd and they accused Bernie supporters of throwing chairs. Cenk Uygur went on a 10-minute rant about how that was complete nonsense and was all lies. It was all bullshit. And it was great. I mean, so they actually did a lot of great work back then about the very thing, Kit, that you were just talking about. But ultimately, that was just one incarnation among many of the network. And so I think that really sort of made itself very obvious, especially now with these comments, where it's just, I mean, now he's saying, well, now he's able to say they failed long after they failed. Because what do these guys do in this space? What do these hustlers do? They milk everything for every ounce they can get out of it, right? So, of course, they're going to milk the AOC thing until it's completely obvious to everybody that it was fake all along, right? And then they'll move on to the next thing. That's how you run a media company online, which he's done successfully for, 15 years now?
Yeah, but see, eventually people realize that consistency matters, and sooner or later, like, that all dries up. Like, if conservatives or anyone that's maybe wants to go back to TYT, if you haven't learned your lesson the first time, then you're going to get swindled again, because all what Cenk wants is money for his network, and he's made some serious stupid gambles that have backfired in his face. And again, the name of his book, Justice is Coming. That's the lamest title I ever heard in my entire life.
So gentlemen, let's pivot.
Give the devil his due. They are the Madonna of alternative media. They have a new face every couple of years, and so far, they've been ahead of the trends.
So what I was gonna say, let's pivot. We're gonna cover the second question, which is Bernie Sanders movement dead, and then we're gonna move on to Nick's segment, with Joe Biden in Hawaii. So what's happening in Hawaii? So that's what's coming up. So Nick, if you could pull up that second clip I sent, the second video clip, and we'll pivot here, and this should be roughly about the same amount of time, maybe a little bit less. Now this other video has a lot of good stuff in it that Freddie kind of covers, so we'll maybe play about 2 minutes of that, and then we'll fast forward it a little bit. So let's play maybe the first 3 minutes of it, Nick, and then we'll fast forward to catch another 3 minutes later on in the video. But the question, 1 second, let me set it up. So the question, so Freddie is the guy who wrote the article, AOC is just another Democrat. Now, you may not have known, or maybe Nick knows, because Nick is kind of in tune with more of liberals than I am, or at least they're in your feed because they are always coming after you. This guy, I guess his article sort of, sent more shockwaves than we thought. Because if you notice, this guy was brought on by the professional managerial left who do podcasts. They all brought him on, from Katie Halper to Bad Fade to we're about to cover the Kyle Kulinski one, where he brings them on too. But you notice the professional managerial class left decided to bring him on because it's almost a critique of what they've been advocating for. It's not almost, it is a critique of what they've been advocating for. So it's sort of like, it's one thing for all of us who have been saying the same thing. It's another thing for somebody who they feel is an equal to them. I'm not saying Katie or Bree think we're not equal, but I'm just saying people in the professional managerial class is another thing for somebody in their own class and their own space to talk or write about it. So it feels like what he's saying is now finally being taken, or what we've been saying and what he is now saying is finally being taken seriously. So the question is the Bernie Sanders movement dead? And let's play the video, Nick, and we can pause, stop, and start if we need to.
Sort of grappling with the fact that, the whole Bernie thing appears to have petered out and we don't have a lot to show for it. Bhaskar Sankara wrote a piece, I think last year, where he sort of talked about the fact that, it definitely appears that we're sort of in a unhealthy stasis at this point. So that notion is out there. But, I emphasize this in the piece for a point, like, it's not just that it's annoying to me when you get all of the sort of AOC and Bernie, like, sort of, mythology and, we have to support our socialist champions stuff at the same time as everyone is saying we can't do anything. They're still fucking asking for donations all the time, right? Like,
pause it right there. And I think, Nick, you allude to this part a lot, Nick, or you're the person that I can think of who have talked about this point, maybe in a different sort of phrasing, but he is also he's upset. And this is what you asked Marianne Williamson. It's a question similar to this. After all the money we've donated, like, what, you asked the question, like, why are we supposed to invest in you when we didn't get anything from it? And what he's saying here, and he kind of goes into more detail later in the video, but we're not going to see that part. But he's saying, how are you out of one mouth saying, you're our only hope, and we need to support you by donating, and then at the same time you're saying you're basically powerless. You're a junior representative. You don't have the numbers to be that powerful, but you're taking our money. So that's where the rub is to me, and I think that's what Nick has alluded to many times, and this is the reason why we went so hard at Marianne Williamson, because we didn't want the working class to be taken advantage of financially by this continued grift by the professional managerial class left.
And CJ, remember, I asked Marianne Williamson about this, and the professional managerial left, the Marianne Williamson, the Cal Kulinski, they don't care about resource management or strategy for the left. Because I asked Marianne Williamson about resource management, if we have concerns about donating towards politicians, and her answer was, if you feel that way, don't vote for me. That's her answer to that question. Because they don't want you part of the club if you actually care about strategy. They just want the dumb left that they cultivate that's all about vibe. We just throw money at these people and hope they save us.
Well, ballot access is mythical stuff.
And also having your staffers sit in Zoom calls as you try and get therapeutic healing from venting out your anger and disappointment at them. Isn't that another story that's also been happening? Like, she would have these meetings that would last for like hours on end, and she's just crying and verbally yelling at these people who are working for her, and she's using them as their own therapist or something like that. I mean, is that also taking place? Because I noticed she has had a lot of emotional issues and outbursts towards everyone that's been working for her so far.
Or ex-work or former employees. Go ahead, though.
Anyway, let's continue.
Party enough power. My natural response is, okay, why did I make all those $27 donations? And, when I first started donating to Bernie when I was a grad student, right? Like the whole Bernie machine hoovered up millions of dollars off of small donors, which sounds very noble when you're talking about how Washington gets funded. But then when you turn around and say, oh, we can't get anything done, it seems kind of malign to me, right? Like you took those donations and you sent the fundraising emails in which you talked about everything that you're going to get done and how powerful you are. And now you're saying, oh, we can't do anything. That seems pretty.
That is what you call a grifter, ladies and gentlemen.
Right, exactly.
You know the things they call workers and poor people who call out politicians. The slur that they call independent citizen journalists because they have the audacity of having a voice. How dare you have a voice in political discourse? What are you, a grifter? So the professional managerial class call us grifters. Meanwhile, they are doing quite literally the definition of a grift.
I don't know, Nick. How many super chats have you gotten tonight? What have you made? $35 on this stream so far? I don't know.
That cash money.
Yeah, cash.
Where's your monocle?
Right, exactly.
Anyway, let's continue because that's the grift. The definition of a grift is when you are making money, you're raising money for a cause you don't really believe in. They don't really believe they're creating a political revolution, but they will take your money.
True.
And then they were like, oh, well, what can we do, man? We got to vote for Joe Biden. We got to support Ukraine aid. You know what I mean? But anyway, let's continue.
Pretty cruel to me.
Yeah, so this is good because this is the area where we disagree. So most of your piece when I'm reading it, I'm going.
He's back in the Brady Bunch house.
Yep, because as you said, you're cataloging the votes and the specific points where you're like, messed up here. What are you trying to do? What's your identity? Are you really an outsider? Are you trying to be an insider? You're trying to win higher office, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I still ultimately, the part where I disagree was that last part where I felt like you sort of fed into what I would describe as the doomerism and the nihilism on the left, which is a pervasive problem on the left that we always have to, I feel like, combat. Whereas your argument seemed to be, well, what if those people were kind of right? And so is that a fair categorization of your argument?
Yeah, I mean, look.
See, that's a shit answer.
I grew up in a far lefty environment.
No, I was just going to say, that's a shitty answer to say, yeah. The right answer to that question is to say, no, it's not doomerism and nihilism to admit that Justice Democrats failed.
Yeah.
Nihilism is to commit to the same failed strategy over and over again. There's nothing nihilistic or doomeristic about giving up on the Democratic Party. That's what Kyle thinks, because Kyle has no political imagination whatsoever. And he feels like if the Democrats fail, so fails any progressive or left of center movement. And so I wish he wouldn't have given him, I mean, maybe he expands upon that. I haven't seen this yet. But I would never concede that giving up on the Democrats means reverting to any sort of like,
we explained many times
Pardon
before.
me. Excuse me.
We explained many times before that the idea that nothing can be done unless we anoint these heroes is the highest form of nihilism.
Exactly. Yes, that's a better way of putting it. Yep.
So what we at RBN, we are the height of revolutionary optimism. I have a mutual aid. I got the graphic was just made.
I saw that. Looks good.
Meet and greet. I haven't posted yet, but we're gonna share it on YouTube here soon. We feel like there's stuff that can be done. Rome is building a library because he's an optimist. CJ is meeting and organizing with homeless people because he's an optimist.
Right.
He believes there's a reason why we should be doing that. They don't believe. They're like, all right, we can't win these elections. We're doomed. We're screwed.
Right.
That,
well, exactly.
That's their mindset. That's the highest form of doomerism. Our mindset is it doesn't fucking matter who wins in 2024. Trump, Biden, bring them on. Doesn't fucking matter. It literally doesn't matter because we're going to organize no matter what. But their mindset is they go on highs and lows based on who wins, who wins, and who loses the election.
Well, we had Thomas Frank on. He's all afraid. Oh my God, I don't even want to say it. Trump is going to win again. I said, don't be afraid of it. I said, what are you
embrace it. Embrace it.
Yeah, embrace it.
We love Thomas Frank. We love Thomas.
I love Thomas Frank too. I know. I love him too. I love him too.
He was kind of timid too when he was on the show. We had the same type of conversation. He was like, China. Trump was like, who cares? Like we had the same conversation when he was on here. So, but go ahead, Nick, if you were gonna play.
Yeah, like Maury Kimberly explained on our show last week, and this is what every black leftist understand that scares the shit out a lot of people. We survived Trump, fam. You guys think Donald Trump, after everything the black community been through?
Well, that's what Ajamu Baraka said.
Stupid ass. Hold on, Donald Trump. After everything we've been through, everything the police state had their boot on our neck, but Donald Trump, that moron, that game show moron, is gonna destroy us. We survived Jim Crow Joe and the crime bill, but Donald Trump's stupid ass is gonna be the end of our community. That's absurd, and that's part of. I gotta be careful here because I was talking about this with Pasta earlier, where a lot of white America centers their issues as the biggest thing ever. Trump is a stress factor for white suburban liberals. Right. So that's why they elevate them and like, oh my God, if Trump get in office, it's gonna be the worst thing ever because he stressed them out. But Trump is no different than George W. Bush, than Barack Obama, and Joe Biden. Our community survived. We will survive if Donald Trump win again. And we will organize. That's called revolutionary optimism. Meanwhile, Kyle's going to have a panic attack if fucking Joe Biden doesn't win in 2020.
Right.
You guys see the difference? Meanwhile, go ahead, Pedro. Then we play the.
That's what Ajamu Baraka told you. I don't know if he. Sorry. Go ahead, kid.
Yeah. So when we look at when we look at how Trump has been perceived by these managerial people, especially people like Kyle, they view him as the end-all, be-all threat to the republic. He isn't. He's a symptom of it. There's a greater poison in our democracy, in our republic, and that is the dynastic families that have made political careers for themselves for like 40 plus years. And then, of course, you have their successors. You have the Dan Crashaws, you have the AOCs, you have the MTGs waiting, standing by for people like Nancy or Turtle Boy Mitch McConnell to eventually pass away. See, it's not Trump. He's an easy target to be made into the villain for somebody like Kyle. Oh, he can make clickbait videos and say, this is what Trump is doing. It's fascist state. All what Trump did is take the pretty neoliberal mask off of all the things that previous presidents have done. All what Trump has done is just tell the truth. And that is, hey, the reason why we're going to war is because there's oil in Syria. That's the only reason why. Yes, the system is corrupt. Right. I've used it. Trump just reveals everything, and it upsets the neoliberal establishment because, oh no, that's going to impact people thinking, well, wait a minute, hold on. This has been going on long before Trump. Trump isn't the bad guy. You might call him a bad person, fine, but he's not the architect of this system. And Trump is, the way I view it, it would be more beneficial for a real progressive movement if Trump were to get reelected into office. Because, again, it would show for a fact, and again, it still doesn't matter, though, but it would show for the fact that the Democrats are incapable of holding true to their values. They inspire nothing, and it's time for us to break away from it and do other things other than wasting our time with politicians that don't even have our best interests at heart.
Well, also, when you look at the behavior of Democrats in these Jim Jordan hearings about the weaponization of the government and censorship, as people in the commentary space and people who believe that without the ability to communicate, without speech, you have nothing else. Everything else proceeds from there. You can't really make the case that Trump is a more existential threat than a second term of Biden. I dread to think what psychopaths like Plaskett and Schultz will do to our ability to have shows and platforms like this if they are empowered, God forbid, with a takeover of Congress, the Senate, and the presidency, the trifecta, without any interference. You've put the left in a position where it is really not clear that it's better for us or our interests, given those choices, that you don't get Donald Trump.
Anyway, let's continue the video and then we can chime in afterwards. We still got a lot of cover here.
And I still have a network that includes a lot of people who self-identify as communists. Most of them have gray hair now, but they are the kind of people who just say, like, every time that someone exciting comes down the pike in electoral politics, they just say, you're getting fooled again. Lucy's going to pull out the football out from Charlie Brown again. We've been down this path 100 times. You should know better by now than to expect anything. They'll talk about Obama, right? Like, the George W. Bush administration was a horror show from beginning to end. So much awful things happened. Everybody was desperate for change. We got a guy showing up talking about hope and like borrowing slogans from the labor movement in Barack Obama. And he ends up, governing as a like center-right technocrat.
Yeah, Bill Clinton.
And those commies I know said, look, we were right. You should never have believed a Democrat who told you that he was Mr. Hope and Change, and you got the wool pulled over your eyes. And those people said the same thing about Bernie in 2016, and they said the same thing about AOC in 2018. And I have fought,
and they was right, and they were extremely based, by the way,
fought for a long time to maintain a commitment to electoral politics, because I think that it's foolish to abandon that element of the fight for progressive change. And I think that those commies have marginalized themselves, and their politics obviously aren't relevant at all.
Sir, hold up, sir. You just lost me completely. You just lost. Let me explain why he said it's so stupid. And this is what professional managerial class people do all the time. They straw man our argument. I know a ton of communists, Marxist-Leninists. They are the people who advocate for using electoralism. Marx advocated for building socialist third parties. That is what RBN is working on. That is what real Marxist-Leninists are working on, building communist parties. So when you guys keep making this argument where we say, oh, we're not engaging in electoral politics and we are handicapping ourselves, that is false. Just because we don't vote for Democrat and Republican do not mean we gave up on electoral politics. Our argument is we should not engage in this fraudulent capitalist electoral politics system without our own offensive political party. We need a Marxist-Leninist socialist political party. That is the goal. You can make the argument that is electoral politics. Having a political party, even engaging in mutual aid, engaging in activism, and then having someone on the ballot, which I advocate for, giving people someone to vote for after you showed up for them. That is electoral politics, and we advocate leaving the Democratic Party because you guys are wasting time and resources instead of doing this project that we highly agree with. So he is completely strawmanning our argument. So now I question, who are you even talking to? You guys know wrong with a political party? Like, this is what communists do. Like, we build parties and we take advantage of the system as we have it. But anyway, CJ, I know you want to chime in. Go ahead.
No, what I was going to say is that this guy, Freddie, is way better than most of them, but still understand he still operates in the professional managerial class.
He's still part of that anti-communist
sort of, yeah. He's still like part of that. He still wants to participate in electoral politics through the Democratic Party. So you get what I'm saying? Like, he is still not where we are, but he is a lot further to where we are, closer to where we are than like Kyle or somebody else. Go ahead.
CJ, think about how many times have we corrected people, literally to their face, where they be like, "Oh, I heard." And Ryan Grimm is a recent example. That we like, yeah, I know you guys' argument is that no electoral politics. Well, no, we didn't say that. No, not through the Democratic Party, and they purposely do that. where they say, well, if you don't support the Democrats, that means you must not support electoralism at all. And I support ballot initiatives. I'm in a ballot initiative state. I believe if you're not in a ballot initiative state, guess what your priority should be? Make it a ballot initiative state. I think that's something that we should focus on because we can get actual material needs as workers. We got Medicare expansion. We got affordable housing in Missouri. We got recreational marijuana because of ballot initiatives. So my focus on ballot initiatives is electoralism, fam. It's not the way you guys play, though. So they say, oh,
that's why
you guys
are
anti-electoralism. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, I made my point. Let's continue.
Can you fast forward to 13:20? This is the second half I wanted to show you. This is the part where Kyle now is going to make the case for the Democratic Party and for why to continue the Bernie Sanders movement. It's about 3 minutes long. Now, I know we're going to stop it because he's going to say a lot of stuff that are achievements that we're going to disagree with. So go ahead, Nick. You can start.
Biden is bad, tap dance. But then also, I feel like this same group of people just brushes aside and ignores and acts like the good things don't exist. And I'm actually shocked at the number of decent things that he did do. I mean, the student loan debt reduction, which he's still fighting for to this day. By now,
my question, I'll be very quick because I want the video.
So you start by naming shit he didn't do.
Right, exactly.
As an example of what he did.
The first thing you name is something he did not actually do.
How many people had their debt reduced? Jesus Christ, what a cock.
I want the video to keep playing, but I just want to quickly insert this. And this is why Kyle politics astound me. And we asked the question, how does a certain narrative or how does a certain take, how does it help our movement? And I want to hear Kyle out because I want you guys to think about this. How does his mindset help our movement? So, I want to say this because he said, well, there's people not getting Biden credit for stuff. And I'm asking you guys this question right now. Why should we give a politician credit for anything when we personally don't feel it in our life? If your life is not improving with their policies, you have zero reason to give them credit for it. Why should we? If you look at Biden infrastructure bill, you're like, man, I don't feel this shit. And when you look at Biden, any one of these Biden bills, right? You're like, I don't feel this shit. If you don't feel it, why should you give them credit? How does that benefit our movement? Giving a guy credit that's not doing anything for your life?
Well, sure.
I asked it in a different way to myself. It's funny you have a similar question. I said, I don't understand why is that a thing? Why is it a thing that people aren't giving Joe Biden credit for the minimal thing? And he acknowledges, because I skipped over a lot of the video, but in the video, he goes through some of the bad stuff. He's like, look, I can list some bad stuff he did. And he listed, It's like, but he also has done some good things and people want to acknowledge it. So a person does 250 terrible things and then they do 10. You are wondering, why aren't you giving credit for the 10? That's what it feels like. I'll pass it back.
I don't have to acknowledge if someone does 200 terrible things and they do 10 good things. So it's like, okay, but they did 200 terrible things. No, they're not a good person.
Well, and they did. It's the same old Democratic shell game. It's the two mob bosses fighting for your fealty, right? Well, this guy, he's going to shake you down for 300 a week. I'm only going to ask you for 280. So you're supposed to get behind them for that.
Right.
Well, let's continue.
Don't exist. And I'm actually shocked at the number of decent things that he did do. I mean, the student loan debt reduction, which he's still fighting for to this day by now invoking the Higher Education Act, the $1,400 stimulus checks. He massively reduced the drone war. He pulled the troops out of Afghanistan.
Oh, God.
The Democrats actually slipped into the IRA that they overturned the Supreme Court decision to stop the EPA from regulating carbon emissions.
What?
That's a huge
Wait a minute. What about Roe v. Wade? Roe v. Wade, you stupid idiot. God damn it. Oh, my God.
He put that in the IRA. But
that was the Supreme
why don't you
Court
talk
too.
about what he put in the other bill that they don't talk about? I think it was the debt ceiling that completed the pipeline deal that Joe Manchin wanted to have done. He couldn't get it done in any other legislation. They snuck it into the debt ceiling.
How about
So what are you talking about?
Even
Go
the
ahead.
IRA opens up 600 million acres of ocean area to drilling.
So
even the IRA opens up, once again, 600 million acres of ocean area to drilling projects. Add to that the Willow Project, largest drilling project approved in the history of federal lands. Add to that something Kyle will never talk about, the Nord Stream pipeline, which was the greatest carbon bomb in human history, the greatest emission of greenhouse gases caused by man-made action in the history of the planet. And so this idea, the IRA gave the Supreme Court the power to regulate the EPA. I mean, we've talked about this in the past. I don't remember if it was on this show or ours, but I mean, it's just such a joke. Everything he mentioned there was such an utter joke.
A half measure,
even the winding down of the drone program and the Afghanistan pullout, that was all in service of funding World War III, right? I mean,
he's still seeing
nothing there made any sense. Nothing, not a single thing.
And not only that, like, lying by omission is a thing, guys. Like, so when I hear Kyle's rant here, it is not unreasonable to call him a liar, because he's lying by omission. He pretend that Biden is good on climate, even though we just brought up all the million reasons. I was just about to bring up Nord Stream. I'm glad you did. Can you guys know that Joe Biden is the biggest eco-terrorist in modern human history? In modern human history, no one ever committed an attack, maybe of all of human history. No one ever committed an assault on the environment the way he did after the Nord Stream pipeline bombing. But Kyle's going to talk about some fucking bullshit and some legislation that does not matter, considering that in the Willow Project. Brings up Afghanistan, ignores the fact that he's literally starving the Afghanistan citizens by seizing billions of their profit. And they said, well, we got to do this so it doesn't legitimize the Taliban government. But no, these are ordinary Afghanistan citizens who have businesses that was forced to shut down. People can't feed themselves. Like, this is a direct attack on Afghanistan citizens because they want the Afghanistan people to turn against the Taliban. Right. But Kyle is praising that.
Of course.
They're like, you can't talk about Biden's Afghanistan policy without bringing that up. He is starving millions of people in Afghanistan, and you praise him for pulling out Afghanistan?
Yeah.
There was a study that showed that more people died recently because of Biden seizing their assets than in the Afghanistan war in the last 10 to 15 years. And you give him credit for that? That's a grotesque lie by omission. That's why I said earlier, he's just a rank propagandist at this point. Absolute rank propaganda.
We know Kyle for Biden too. By the way, it's just, again, it's more of like no comment for Hawaii, no comment for people of East Palestine, Ohio, people who have been suffering again through environmental disasters. Let's even look at Flint, Michigan. Still no safe, clean drinking water. I mean, all the stuff that Kyle is praising about Biden doesn't give a damn about people. He doesn't even know where he's at half the time. At this point, Kyle is either dumb. He is trying to recreate his imagery, as Keen said about TYT, or it's just that he has convinced himself that this new reality of the Democratic Party and where it's at is the correct mindset. Maybe watch, he's going to probably have a mental breakdown pretty soon.
Well, we did a half-hour video showing him straight out, no other way to interpret it, lying to his audience about Marianne. So we know that he does sit on there and consciously lie. It's not that he's misguided or his politics have changed. He straight up lies to his audience with full awareness that he's lying to them. To what end? To maintain good relationships with money people, powerful people who he hopes will maybe put him on a platform one day, or to maintain the social standing that the money he's making now on this platform allows him. Who knows? But we know that Kyle, from just breaking down some of his videos, there's no way these are honest mistakes or naive politics. No, he's straight up lying to his audience. The only real question is, Why is he doing it? What's the motive?
That's why
Money.
Nick calls him a
Money.
propagandist. But
Money.
let's get to the video. Go.
Yeah,
go
we
ahead.
gotta continue. Let's continue. We gotta continue this clip.
The EPA is not allowed to do that. They did project labor agreements for 200,000 construction workers, which raises their pay. He did a $15 minimum wage through an executive order for federal contractors and federal employees. He did gun reform with red flag laws and closing the boyfriend loophole. And that's all not sufficient, but it's way more than I ever thought he would get, especially with the small majority he has compared to Obama, who had a super majority and got dick. Put Ketanji Brown Jackson on the court, George Floyd executive order, which created
Let's
a
let him list
registry
more,
of
and we'll
abusive
comment
cops.
later. Let's let him
The
list more.
NLRB has
Let
been
him cook.
genuinely pro-labor in a way that we never saw from Obama. The PACT Act, which did health care for veterans exposed to toxic burn pits. There's been a net increase of 800,000 manufacturing jobs. The CHIPS Act, which is debatable in terms of how much of it is corporate welfare and how much of it is legit, but it's definitely led to an increase in job creation, manufacturing job creation, and it's definitely something that some very important swing states are looking at favorably because it's helping them out economically. 15% corporate minimum tax rate was part of the IRA. Used to have these corporations who would pay literally nothing in taxes or get a negative tax rate, which is a net subsidy. Now they have to pay a minimum of 15%. Tax credits for electric vehicles was in the IRA, which they're doing a lot of like made in America green jobs, which again, it's not sufficient, but it's way more than I ever expected from him. He did $64 billion for Obamacare credits, and he banned temporary junk health insurance plans, which were basically a giant scam that Trump allowed people to expand for 3 years. So anyway, I look at all this stuff and I'm going, look, it's a lot more complex and complicated and nuanced.
And I'm saying it just real quick because he bring up the electric vehicle thing, and I see Rokan and them do this all the time. I sold cars, guys, for 4 years. No work. There's not workers buying new electric vehicles, especially now.
Mm-hmm.
And I know because I saw how much money every single person made who I bought cars. And the motherfuckers buying these hybrids and these electric cars are not proletariat. On all their financial forms, in some form of management. So when Cal talking about electric vehicle tax subsidies, that's not a policy that help us at all. Just heads up. You in my realm now. That's bullshit. Yeah. The workers got robbed at these dealerships. The proletariat, the bourgeoisie, the management class that could afford these electric vehicles got everything. The government gave them everything. Low interest rates and shit. We paying 10 to 15%, 20%. But he praised a policy that's top down that helped the bourgeoisie, not the workers. But sorry, that was ridiculous, but I'll let it continue.
Then just let's throw our hands up and let's say, fuck it, none of this works anymore. Because I do think Biden doing these things, he's a product of his environment. And just like back in the 1990s when the whole thing was like the crime scare and he was doing the crime bill and all that stuff, it's like all of the anger in the ether and the calls for Medicare for all and we want higher wages and unions, etc. It's like that has translated to one extent or another in a president who is far more progressive than he was as a senator. And so the thing that frustrates me is that I do feel like a lot of these people you're describing, they just don't acknowledge the reality. They just like ignore the good parts, only focus on the bad parts, and then use that to further feed what I would describe as their cynicism and their nihilism. I'm happy people should be skeptical, but it's when the skepticism crosses into cynicism that I'm like, you're just not being honest about the reality of what's going on. So where in that do you disagree with any of that?
Pause it there. So, and I'm going to bring up the last part of this video. It's only 30 seconds, so I'm going to take yours down, Nick. And I'm going to play the last 30 seconds here. What he's saying there, I just don't understand. So, no, I'm sorry. Let me explain it this way. He basically is saying that he gets the critique. He doesn't get why your critique leads you to saying F the Democratic Party. He's saying your critique, he doesn't get you how it leads you to doomerism, how it leads you to not wanting to, how it leads you. He calls, when he says nihilism, that means the not participating in helping the Democratic Party. I'm starting to pick up when they use certain words, they use nihilism when you say you don't want to help the Democratic Party specifically. Even if you say you're helping the Green Party, that doesn't register to them. That's just nihilism to them. So I'll play this last part in a second, but what say all of you, because it sounded like a couple of you wanted to chime in when we stopped it right here before I played this last 30 seconds.
All of this stuff that Kyle is bringing up is nothing but fake smoke screens. Okay, that is all what he's showing in regards to what Biden has accomplished, because it hasn't uplifted people from poverty. We're seeing the price of milk and other goods continue to rise up. We're still seeing people being evicted from their homes and apartments. We're still seeing small businesses being shut down. We're seeing communities being abandoned. Look what's happening to Maui, Hawaii, for example. I know we're going to talk about that later, but this administration doesn't give a damn. But look at how many things that this entire administration has been doing for the top 1%, for Wall Street, big banks, and corporations. The fact that Kyle Kulinski wants to call the rest of us nihilists shows that he knows that Biden isn't delivering, but he's afraid. He's afraid of losing his relevancy. He's afraid that he's made mistakes now and that no one's going to take him seriously anymore. And nobody should, because when you have to go to bat for Jim Crow Joe, who's been on the wrong side of history since he first got elected into office, tells me all I need to know about your character. You're going to tell people that, oh, we need to take it easy. We should be happy with what we got from Biden. We didn't get anything. We didn't even get crumbs. We have an empty plate from a person who doesn't even know where he's at anymore. For Christ's sakes, Biden is attached to a CPAP machine when he goes to sleep, which means he can't breathe when he's sleeping.
Go ahead, go somebody else. Go ahead.
To be fair, a lot of young people have that problem too, Kit.
I know. But the thing is, at his age, it's gonna mess with his brain more.
Well, I'll grant you that.
Go ahead.
Watching Kyle and listening to that take, as I think you're often forced to wonder, who the fuck watches this? It's no different from the take you'd get from a CNN roundtable. I think what it is if you've ever noticed, coming up, you had your friends who were like all rebellious and doing their rebellious thing. If they were from the burbs when they get a little older, it's like salmon swimming upstream. They go back there. They go back to that way of life, man. They could have had 6 safety pins in their nose when you knew them. You see them 10 years later, man, they're like raking the yard. They go back to what they do. I think the parts of the Bernie movement that really were basically standard issue libs in their heart, that's who this is for. It's they can't go back to the CNN because they were part of the Bernie thing, but real left politics don't actually appeal to them. That's not their background. That's not their mentality. That's not where they're coming from. So Kyle, Crystal, all of this stuff, that's who this is for. I can't imagine who else watches it. It's literally everything he's saying here, the whole formulation. Washington is too tough. The best you could do is the absolute bare minimum. And why aren't people celebrating him? You could watch Meet the Press and hear exactly the same shit.
The same exact thing. Anyone else chiming in before we close this segment here?
Yeah, I'll say something controversial. Bernie, retire. Go away.
All right, let me play the.
I thought Kit was going to say Bernie must have a great sex game.
All right, let me play the last.
I'm also going to say it does not help that this guy looks dope sick.
Yeah, he does. Ugh.
It
looks like he needs to drink some water.
It looks like
Let me
maybe
play the last 30
Chuck
seconds of
Schumer
it.
worked him over behind the building before this.
Right here. So let me play the last 30 seconds, guys. Let's listen.
He's the best we can do. I mean, that's just they don't do that, right?
But I didn't say that last part, though. Hold on, because I didn't say that last part. In fact, the argument that I'm making is the exact argument that you just said conservatives do. I agree with you. That is what conservatives do, and I want the left to keep doing that. But my fear is that when we feed too much into the doomerism and the nihilism, where it denies objectively positive things, that it makes people want to sit on the sidelines and even poo-poo the people who are trying to push the Democrats to be better. That's my point.
Hey, y'all, do me a favor.
It's basically is a shield for himself. He's going to be pushing Democrats to do better. And I guess the reason he needs people, like, he don't want you to criticize people that wants to stay in this, keep running their head against the wall. And I guess that's the criticism that he has of Freddie and people in our position as saying they call us nihilists, even though we're literally saying we're participating in electoralism through the Green Party. Like, that's still nihilism to them. But I'll pass it to the panel for final words, or Nick, if you want to get to the next topic.
I have one more thing I want to introduce because this flows well. Friend of the show, Turncoat Don, makes amazing videos.
Oh, yeah.
You guys think, waiting for the end to play this, because if you guys think Kyle's a serious person, if you think you watched him before and you think you're crazy because you think you changed, like what happened? Well, fuck, he used to watch this fucking motherfucker, right? You're not crazy. Like this guy is a serial gaslighter, and he want to pretend that these old footages of him do not exist. Now, as I say in this tweet, you witnessed so many of these Bernie Sanders progressive. Remember, Kyle Kulinski created the movement, the Progressive Justice Democrat. He was one of the creators of that movement. We have witnessed so many of those people openly sell out. If you wonder what I mean, look at this damning video. This is one of the most damning videos I've seen of anyone ever. I was talking to Nico about that. Like, this is the most damning video I see of anyone, because if I ever got my ass beat by my own argument, I will have to reflect and seriously consider some shit. Now watch this video. I can't wait to give you guys a response, because this video was fabulous.
Former Soviet Union and other authoritarian dictatorial regimes. We're really talking about other people being dictatorial. And Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, as bad as Biden is, you guys are significantly worse, and it's not even close. The Democrats are just way better. They're just way better. They're a trillion times better than Republicans.
All right, so there's a lot I have to say in response to this. These kinds of criticisms from this guy, I honestly believe that these people usually overstate how bad Trump is, and they understate how bad Biden is. Well, you're more ideologically in agreement with Biden than you are in agreement with Trump. Well, actually, when it comes to the First Step Act, I agree with Trump on that. When it comes to pardoning Alice Johnson, I agree with Trump on that. When it comes to TPP, Trump's against it, Biden's for it. I agree with Trump on that. I agree more with Trump on North Korea than I agree with Biden. I would need to be convinced that Biden would fight for at least one or two of my top 5 issues. Medicare for all, free college, living wage, ending the wars, and UBI. The people who say Trump is a fascist and they think he's like, basically, we can't survive another 4 years of America with him. Yes. The country will survive 4 years with Trump. The country will survive 4 years with Joe Biden. Again, I think they understate how bad Biden is. Why? On so many core issues, he's against us. Me, at least. I can't speak for this guy. Joe Biden pushed for NAFTA. He repeatedly pushed for TPP. He's a supporter of the Iraq War. On all the pivotal issues of his time, he was wrong. So stop overstating how bad Trump is. The country's still going to exist in 4 years. And understating how bad Biden is. Because it's annoying. I just don't agree with the people who are like, he's a fascist, he's a Nazi, the country's not going to exist in 4 years. You're hyperbolic and you're ridiculous.
Oh! You got knocked the fuck out, man!
So, do you guys remember when? And once again, this is a damning video, right? Do you guys remember my psychology, my hood psychology I have? Kyle is running away from the man on the left there. He want to completely and utterly reject the man on the left to the point where he want to completely change his appearance. So I would love to ask a psychologist, a real one, if there's something there you hiding from your past. Because Kyle completely obliterates them. Remember in the first video, he said you want Biden to at least fight for a few of these things, like Medicare for all and living wage and ending the wars, for example. Biden did absolutely none of those things. Biden did absolutely none of those things, and now a few years later he flip-flopped.
What about Zankus? Is Zankus a psych? Is he a psych doctor? I know he's a professor. You know what I'm talking about. Zankus, the guy who comes on your show every now and then.
Zankus, I gotta ask him.
Ask him. He's a professor. He's smart.
Yeah, because
certainly smarter than me.
Because that's a huge 180 compared to what Kyle was. Because I remember Kyle Kulinski early on, how he used to be a firebrand, and then he does this. He becomes nothing but a soft, weak individual saying, "Oh, Biden's doing great things." I mean, honestly, it's either Crystal did something, or
I'm sorry, man. I stick to my thesis. That looks like one whipped motherfucker to me.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Those two pictures side by side. Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, there has to be
We know
some
what's going on
explanation. There has to be an explanation for the pivot, but he should not pretend like there's not some sort of pivot. There's an explanation for Jank's pivot. We understand $20 million is his reason for his pivot. I'm trying to understand outside of what Russell is saying. I'm trying to understand the pivot for Kyle Kulinski, because that video, to Nick's point, that is devastating. That's devastating. Literally saying the opposite. Probably not even 2 years ago, he's literally saying the opposite. And I think the older Kyle was more accurate, in my opinion, than this new Kyle that completely has bought into the Democratic Party. I mean, he is now saying that the Democratic Party is going, and this is his debate. This is his debate line. He's not, let me debate Palestine and Israel. Let me debate Ukraine war. It's let me debate you on whether or not the Democratic Party is better than the Republicans. I mean, that tells you to me. But I'll pass to the panel for any other comments, and then Nick, we can get to the next story.
Yeah, going once, going twice.
Yeah, no, I think we're good.
Yeah, nothing else can be said that hasn't been said already.